with the 90s, yeah? It's just a short comment, and then I will ask you a question connected with that. So in the 90s, when before the term of Leonid Kuchma, when the active pro-Russian propaganda started in Ukraine, there was the time when Ukraine distanciated, from this pro-Russian position. They tried to push pro-European ideas, including Chernobyl, and they during the Yugoslav conflict it showed perfectly well. Yes, former Yugoslavia. So we supported Croatia separating from Yugoslavia. So we showed that, okay, we support, you are independent, it's okay. And after that, there was the Рабочая газета, which is the newspaper, working newspaper basically, of the Communist Party of Ukraine, which was released till 2019 in Ukraine. And there, before the official start of the term, before the elections of Leonid Kuchma, there was published the statement by the famous Ukrainian poet and also the Communist Party member, saying that the world is wrong about Serbia. We need to support Serbia in this Bosnian war, and which was automatically less support also Russia, because we need to combine the sources and create the alliance between Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. So that started at 90s. And the experts say that this alliance, the historians, there is the article which I can send later to the group. The talking about this alliance started a long time ago, and this impact on the Belarus, on Ukraine started a long time ago in the 90s, actively in the 90s. And experts, even the same historian says that this war, this occupation that happened in 2014 should have started at times of the Orange Revolution, but it didn't because the society was not ready, was not brainwashed enough. So my question to you, related to that, to the brainwashing and the propaganda process, of course, about the staying Belarusian, in this case. So mostly about how Russia wiped off your language, your traditions, how they try to make you believe that Russia is great and you should speak Russian, for such. You should, watch these Russian channels. Russia will save you. How did you personally feel it? Do you feel that Belarusian language is on the edge of the survival,
For me, it's a little difficult because I'm this little percent of people. My first language in my family was Belarusian, and I studied in Belarusian gymnasium, Belarusian lycée. So I'm this little percent of lucky people who maybe didn't feel it fully. But yes, they began to close Belarusian classes, Belarusian schools. They closed my lyceum. It was the best lyceum, humanitarian lyceum in Belarus. And after I studied 1 year, they closed it. And after we continue study, it became not legal. They all the time arrested our journalists from Belsat TV. It was like Belarusian Poland TV, but it was always not legal inside Belarus, but people worked, and all the time they were arrested, pay big straf.
Fine.
Yeah. Yes, but before 2020, the situation was like with some peaks and like 206 when it was not Maidan, but Ploshcha Square. It was 2010. Maybe it was the most big events when people try to make some revolution, but it was not enough people for this big change at that moment, historical moments. But yes, and we have only one really true elections, first elections, and it was true that people voted for Lukashenko. Unfortunately, they were not ready for democratic. He was good populist, like he promised people good things. He was like young, and people as now when in the most difficult times of history, people like populists a lot because they want to have yes, fast solutions for very difficult problems. Like now they voted in Europe a lot about very far-right populists like Trump supporters. Yeah, but after this first elections, all other elections was fake all the time. It was so many. It was so visible that it's not normal elections at all. And in 2020, it was collapse. Everything because everybody in Belarus watched on their own eyes that majority of people against, that it's thousands of thousands people on the streets every day. It was so visible that most of people against, and they became these huge repressions. They made everything possible to arrest people and to make people go to push people in exile. So now some people, it's difficult to count very clean, but we think that maybe around 1 million Belarusian people for these 5 years live somewhere abroad. I think it was like in Crimea because I wrote in the summer. I wrote a big article about occupation of Crimea with my Ukrainian colleague, and like was 30 pages how this propaganda and criminal persons work before they occupied this territory, how they make all these fake situations that majority of Crimean people want to be Russia, but it was also not true. They want to be like little separate like Crimea, but the main idea was not to be part of Russia. But they make so fast this you understand what I want to say? Yes, so the same situation, I'm afraid to see the same situation in next years in Belarus, because now they try all the same steps inside Belarus, like brothers, sisters, but at the same time, I see that situation totally the same, and I'm afraid that in one day it can happen.
And at the same time, people in Belarus afraid to speak in Belarusian language, because Belarusian-speaking citizens just literally became enemies for Belarusian government.
Yes, but it's also a very strict game because at the same time we have some Belarusian programs on government TV. Yes, or on the government radio, or even some pro-government young bloggers, even in Belarusian language sometimes. So if they want, sometimes they use it to show like, oh no, we are not so bad. But it's like only to make a beautiful picture. But if you will speak with some policeman on the street in Belarusian language, maybe he will think, oh, it's some opposition. I want to see a telephone.
And just a remark for everyone, Soviet Union paid plus 15% to the salary of the Russian language teachers to stop Ukrainian, Belarusian language, from their promotion. So people who taught Russian to our nations, basically, they were paid more to promote Russian language. The first companies, the first representations of the Russian World Fund were open in Luhansk in 2007 and in Kharkiv. Ta-ta. What a surprise! Surprise, surprise!
Even most of the best writers are forbidden. Their books are forbidden inside Belarus now, and it's really very famous writers in Europe, for example. They are awarded, they are translated in different languages, but their books are forbidden in Belarus.
Can I verify? I mean, this happened after the independence or before?
The 80s. The end of 80s, there was a document which was released in the Soviet Union that came in function, and I have the witness, for example, Maria Zaremska, who was at that time she worked in Crimea, and she shared that yes, I was proposed plus 15%, like she proved this, like this document came into action. That I was proposed plus 15%, but because she comes from Ternopil, from the west of Ukraine, she refused because she asked that, what about Ukrainian language? Like, the teachers of Ukrainian language, they get the same salary. Like, what is the point? So she refused, and so yes, it is true. So the end of 80s, right before the collapse of, but it was like it's just the continuation, yeah? This, making people believe that Russian language is the language of the aristocratic, yeah, of intelligent people. And people who speak Ukrainian, they come from the village. You are not educated, only village people speak Ukrainian. So this explains why people are ashamed, why people are afraid to use Ukrainian now, yeah, and why it is so hard to switch. So there should be a governmental program to show you that, yeah, that is why, There were steps to make you believe that Ukrainian language or Belarusian language, they are just a part. This is just, how they say, наречие русского языка. Yes, so this is not a real language.
Dialect of Russian language.
Dialect of Russian language. Yeah, that's right.
I think that was the move all over the
Soviet
Union, because at some point at the end of 70s, I think, like there was an attempt to abolish 78, sorry, to abolish the Georgian as a state language of Georgia, because like we had like Georgian as an official language, as an official state language, and also Russian, the state language of Georgia, but also Georgia is part of the Soviet Union. So yes, there was an attempt, and there was this constant attempt to erase Georgian as a language of probably education and elite, and that was a trend that some Georgian people with higher education would use Russian in their daily activities, I think, and without having any professional setting, without any professional setting, even in their daily activities, and that already meant that this was an elite.
And another issue with regard to the minorities, and we always had like ethnic, national minorities, religious minorities in Georgia, and during Soviet time, of course there was the schools, but at schools, it was a big surprise for me when I learned about 20 years ago that ethnic Armenians who used to live in Tbilisi for centuries, and they're part of the shared part of the culture as well, they could not write in Armenian. And they could speak because they used to work. When asked why you can't write, and it was somehow, I don't know, promoted, etc. They were attending the national language schools. So the authorities have done anything, they are not integrated to the Georgian society. They're living in the country, do not know the official language. So it creates barriers. And at the same time, you are losing your own identity, culture and identity. You don't know your own historical language as well. And this is artificially became distanced from the country live, and you have a plan to live here. And this artificial barrier, and only later it becomes the program, but of course it's not sufficient, but everything, and it continued for many, many decades.
And nowadays also in this Russian occupied Abkhazia and Samachal or South Ossetian regions of Georgia, the young people are mostly educated in Russian, and not only educated in Russian, but it's this Russianness or this identification with Russia and yes, exactly, the Russian world, and kind of this mindset that you are kind of
part of Russia.
Part of Russia.
So they're losing the South Ossetian identity, which initially caused the divide and allowed Russia to invade. And now they're losing that South Ossetian identity. It is changed for Russian one.
Like it started much earlier in Abkhazia, already during the Soviet times, when it was like more cool in a way to be part of this, to bear this part of Russian identity somehow, by speaking Russian, writing Russian, proposing yourself in Russian. And I even remember that I was a child when this war happened, and my neighbors who were who fled Sukhumi, they were surprised that like Georgians in Tbilisi were speaking Georgian, and they were saying that, oh, why do you use Georgian in your everyday setting? So, and then I was surprised to hear that they were using Russian, even though they were, identified as themselves as Georgian, etc. So it's a complex situation over there. Like they have many of the people living in Abkhazia have Georgian last names, like mine, because my last name also comes from the Western Georgia, but they identify themselves as Abkhazians/Russians. So that's a very complex situation to mix and confuse people. This identity politics used as a propaganda in order to obliterate what these people have carried for centuries and to kind of erase their identity as members of that particular region and kind of integrate them under the this Russian Russianness, sort of. Yeah, that's also a very powerful tool used that has been used by Russia for many decades, and it's still in progress. It's still used very successfully.
I have a short question, sorry, keep in mind. Does Russia forcefully give the Russian passports?
Yes, they do. I mean, whether forcefully or whether this is also one of these propaganda tools that now you have to be part of Russia, since you are protected by the Russian regime, since you feel more secure in terms of political security, in terms of identity security, security that you're not engulfed into this Georgian nest, because Georgians want that for you, because they don't want they don't want you to be independent. They like are against your self-realization, etc. And yes, like this is kind of again violently but forcefully enforced onto people, and people have no other. Most people, I would say, have no other choice other than to concede. Yeah.
And for nowadays, is Russian language required to study in Georgian schools?
No.
No.
I mean, Russian language was probably was required as a I would say second language during the Soviet times. Then there was another foreign language. One of the languages, like either English, German, or French, mostly, I would say. Nowadays, it's one of the options. I mean, one of the options that some schools offer, besides a broader variety of the Western languages. Yeah.
But yes, they promote a lot of now inside Belarus. I know that they promote a lot to students to go to study in Russian universities. They make special programs, make it some stipendium programs to study for free, because they want to have some.
The Russian government.
You mean the Russian? Yes, they want to. At the first, they have war. They want to take our clever young people and to make them Russian clever young people, and yes, so we have this problem that a big part of our students now try to study in Europe, in Poland, and in other countries. A lot of students, because in Belarus to study now it's also a lot of propaganda, but at the same time a lot of young people go to Russia. So, and Belarus now can be next years without new generation. The most clever young people will be between Russia and European Union.
I wouldn't say that there are a lot of Georgian people, young people going to study in Russia, but definitely there are some, I would say. And we also have quite a big, quite a large diaspora also living in Russia. So that had been a trend until the end of the Soviet Union.
To go
to work to Russia, like from a small country to a bigger one. But at the same time, after the war in Abkhazia, and after everything that happened there, a lot of people found it's more probably economically viable to go to Russia rather than to come to Georgia, because of this whole situation that was in 1990, so after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So the states suffered a great hit and the drastic economic decline, I would say, in the first, especially in the first decade. So there were probably more opportunities in terms of for their survival. But we see this trend of young people coming back to Georgia. I mean, returning would be a different thing. Coming to Georgia, to live in Georgia, because they were raised in Georgian families. Some of them do not even speak Georgian, because they were raised in Russian. But they come to Georgia, they want to study, they want to integrate. We see that, which is, I would say, a very positive trend. And I think that there should be more encouragement, probably on behalf of the Georgian government. But yeah, so it's a bit complicated with that still economic dependence on the Russian of those living in Russia. Yeah.
And one also important thing to say that now they even try to Russian propaganda try to make problems in Poland society. They work a lot with Polish people. They make a lot of Russian propaganda. I think they have they bought some politics, and now it's really sometimes it's became more and more visible inside of Poland how Russia work with a big propaganda wave with Poland society.
They are
No, situation changed a lot last 2 years. I think it changed really a lot because Belarusian and Ukrainian refugees feel it. We often can listen on the street, go back to Ukraine, and it's very my polite version. It sounds in real not so polite.
That's what we talked with Pavlo today during the breakfast, yeah? You remember, you mentioned the role that's in communicating, yeah, with Polish people, yeah. So it's, you already, 2 people experienced that in Poland?
For example, it was terror on a railway, and this Russian propaganda try to write everywhere in Polish social medias that it was Ukraine. And some people believe, and it's really it became more and more problem inside of Poland now.
Because of the anti-Ukrainian and anti-Belarusian sentiment, the growing.
Yeah.
Deteriorating.
They play with historical conflict between Poland and Ukraine. It was some historical problems, and they play with this history negative some moments. Now very good. They have a big resources to.
So a short period of normalization of Polish-Ukrainian relations has ended. Apparently, and we have this polarization in Polish society. Part of the society is strongly pro-European, pro-Ukrainian, and pro-Belarusian, and the other part is isolating themselves and saying that Trump and Orban are only friends.
Yeah.
Yes, like
Eurosceptic.
Eurosceptic, yeah.
Yeah, but
I have a problem with the time.
Yeah.
But
time has problem with us.
mention this that in my opinion, and a really good solution has been at one point when the Russian language which was quite intense. I mean, in terms of, like, for example, media and the films and movies that were usually appear on the screen that would be translated in English, etc. And then there was like it happened during the previous government, right?
Yeah.
Like when the subtitles and the translations were it became mandatory that the companies introduced these translations in Georgian only, and also the subtitles in Georgian only. So, and it's for everything, starting from the cartoons to the movies. So one of the ways to kind of transfer this dominance is to make the language available to this totality of the population, and since this was not happening through this media, and media is one of the easiest ways to transfer this language, right? So many young people lost the connection with the language, kind of. I mean, I'm not saying that this is helping in terms of like broader impact of the Russian propaganda, but also these small things, relatively small things, can also help how to kind of break this dependence, so that again, dependence on this Russian-less, or so people have like choice to they have a choice to choose from a wide variety of foreign languages that they can study.
And dubbed movies or series also switched to Georgian languages.
Yes, yes. So everything that is legally coming, I'm saying legally, I have this legal authorization coming in, entering the country, that we have this mandatory compliance with the language requirements.